Are you prepared for the unexpected? What would you do if you knew a devastating force was headed your way, threatening everything in its path? How are climate changes shaping the future of natural disasters, and possibly your life? As Hurricane Helene barrels towards the Gulf Coast of Florida, bringing with it devastating winds, flash floods, and a surge that could reshape entire communities, the question is not just about the storm itself, but how we respond to an era where these events are becoming all too common. Are we ready to face nature's growing wrath? Hurricane Helene is no ordinary storm. Recently upgraded to a Category 1 hurricane, it's currently ravaging parts of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba. But it's what lies ahead that's capturing everyone's attention. Helene is on a direct path toward Florida's Gulf Coast, where it is expected to intensify before making landfall. This could mean severe damage, widespread flooding, and potentially life-threatening conditions for millions. But what exactly makes a hurricane like Helene so dangerous? At its core, a hurricane is a massive, swirling storm that forms over warm ocean waters. These storms are powered by the heat of the sea, gathering energy and moisture as they move. What starts as a tropical disturbance can quickly evolve into a major weather event, capable of catastrophic destruction. Helene, for example, began as a simple tropical depression, but as it passed over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, it gained strength, transforming into the Category 1 storm we see today, with winds already reaching up to 80 miles per hour, 130 kilometers per hour. While Helene is currently a Category 1 hurricane, hurricanes have the ability to escalate rapidly. They're categorized by wind speed, with Category 5 being the most severe, bringing winds of over 157 miles per hour, 252 kilometers per hour. Even at Category 1, however, hurricanes can cause significant damage, particularly in areas prone to flooding, coastal erosion, or infrastructure failure. For Helene, the combination of wind, rain, and storm surges is what makes it so dangerous. In some areas of Florida and the southeastern U.S., floodwaters could rise up to 10 feet above ground level. Historically, hurricanes have left a trail of devastation across the United States and the Caribbean. The names of infamous storms, like Katrina in 2005, which led to over 1,800 deaths, and Maria in 2017, which decimated Puerto Rico, are etched into our collective memory. While Helene is not currently expected to reach those extreme levels of destruction, the potential for serious harm remains. In the past few years, we've seen an increasing number of these powerful storms forming earlier in the hurricane season and lasting longer. This rise is often attributed to climate change, which is making conditions ripe for hurricanes to thrive. Warmer ocean temperatures fuel these storms, allowing them to carry more moisture and unleash more intense rainfall. As Helene continues to gather strength, it's a stark reminder of the power of nature and the need for preparedness. But Helene also prompts a larger question: as hurricanes become stronger and more frequent, are we prepared to face this new reality? As Hurricane Helene moves closer to Florida's Gulf Coast, the National Hurricane Center, NHC, has issued a stern warning: life-threatening conditions are on the horizon. Helene's path threatens not only coastal areas but also regions far inland, with heavy rain, powerful winds, and the potential for flash flooding and tornadoes. The NHC predicts that Helene will strengthen before hitting Florida on Thursday evening, with wind speeds potentially exceeding 100 miles per hour. The most severe impacts will likely be felt in northern Florida and southern Georgia, where the hurricane's core is expected to move inland. However, tropical storm conditions will begin much earlier on Thursday, meaning residents must complete their preparations as soon as possible. Flooding: Helene could trigger severe urban and flash flooding, with water levels rising up to 10 feet in some areas, particularly along the Florida Peninsula and the Big Bend region. The risk extends beyond Florida, with areas in Georgia, the Carolinas, and even Tennessee potentially facing flooding later in the week. Wind damage: winds from the storm, already at 80 miles per hour, could increase, bringing widespread damage to homes, infrastructure, and power lines. This could result in extended power outages, with trees and debris likely falling onto power lines or directly damaging structures. Inland areas are also at risk, with winds expected to remain strong even as the storm moves away from the coast. Tornadoes. There's also a chance Helene could spawn tornadoes, especially in southern Alabama and the Florida Peninsula. Tornado activity could increase on Thursday and continue into the weekend as the storm spreads across Georgia and South Carolina. Despite these warnings, it's important to note that the impacts of a hurricane are not limited to its core. The outer bands of the storm can bring destructive winds and rains far beyond the eye of the hurricane, meaning that even areas not directly in its path should remain alert. With conditions worsening by the hour, it's critical for those in the affected areas to heed evacuation orders and prepare for the storm. As Hurricane Helene approaches, the most important message from authorities is clear: prepare now and act quickly. With tropical storm conditions expected to begin by Thursday, residents in the affected areas need to finalize their preparations as soon as possible. The National Hurricane Center, NHC, has issued storm surge warnings across the entire Florida Peninsula and the Big Bend region, urging people in high-risk zones to evacuate or take shelter immediately. Evacuation orders. For those living in areas along the coast or in flood-prone regions, local governments have issued evacuation orders. It's vital to follow these instructions. Hurricanes can quickly overwhelm emergency services, and staying behind can put both you and first responders at risk. Evacuation routes have been established, and shelters are open to those who need a safe place to ride out the storm. What to take and how to prepare. If you're evacuating, ensure you have the essentials. Important documents, IDs, insurance papers, medical records. Emergency supplies, flashlights, batteries, first aid kits. Medications, food, and water for at least 3 days. Communication devices, fully charged phones and backup power sources. For those not under evacuation orders, there are still important steps to take. Secure your home by boarding up windows, securing loose outdoor objects, and reinforcing doors. Prepare for potential power outages by stocking up on supplies like non-perishable food, bottled water, and gas for generators. Stay informed by keeping a battery-powered radio on hand to receive updates if the power goes out. Avoiding panic. While it's crucial to take the storm seriously, it's equally important to avoid unnecessary panic. Preparation reduces anxiety, and knowing you've taken the right steps can provide peace of mind. Stay focused on what's within your control and trust the advice of weather experts and local authorities. The role of community. In times like these, community support is vital. Check on neighbors, especially the elderly or those with limited mobility, and ensure they have a plan. Sharing resources and offering help where needed can make a significant difference, especially for those facing challenges in evacuating or securing their homes. Hurricane Helene isn't just another storm, it's part of a growing trend of more frequent and intense hurricanes, a phenomenon closely linked to climate change. As global temperatures continue to rise, the conditions that fuel these powerful storms are becoming more common, leading to more destructive and unpredictable weather events. Hurricanes form over warm ocean waters, which provide the energy they need to grow. As the planet warms due to human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, ocean temperatures rise, allowing hurricanes to become stronger, faster. The extra warmth increases a storm's ability to hold moisture, leading to more intense rainfall, which increases the risk of flooding. Helene is a clear example of this process. It rapidly intensified after moving over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and experts warn that this trend of quick intensification could become the norm in the future. Storms like Hurricane Beryl in 2024 also broke records, achieving Category 5 status in an unusually short amount of time, further highlighting the dangerous effects of climate change. In previous decades, hurricane season typically ramped up in August and reached its peak in September. However, recent years have seen storms forming earlier and with greater frequency. The 2024 season, for instance, started earlier than expected, and Helene is only the latest in a series of major storms this year. Scientists are increasingly concerned that hurricane seasons are becoming longer and more unpredictable, leaving less time for recovery between disasters. Another consequence of climate change is rising sea levels, which makes storm surges more dangerous. As sea levels rise, coastal areas become more vulnerable to flooding, even from smaller storms. When hurricanes like Helene hit, the impact is magnified, as higher waters push further inland, affecting communities that previously would have been safe from storm surge. This is one reason why experts are warning of up to 10 feet of flooding in parts of Florida. The scientific consensus is clear: unless global action is taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, hurricanes will continue to become more powerful and frequent. Helene is not an isolated event but part of a troubling pattern that puts millions of lives and livelihoods at risk. Addressing climate change is not just about preventing future storms, it's about protecting communities, economies, and ecosystems that are already under threat. With hurricanes becoming more devastating, it's crucial that we all take responsibility in combating climate change. Governments need to invest in infrastructure that can withstand stronger storms, improve disaster preparedness, and reduce carbon emissions. On an individual level, simple actions like conserving energy, supporting clean energy initiatives, and staying informed about climate issues can make a significant difference. Hurricane Helene is a stark reminder of the growing power of nature and the vulnerability of our communities in the face of climate change. As Helene approaches, bringing the threat of destructive winds, storm surges, and flooding, we must not only focus on immediate safety but also on the bigger picture: how we can better prepare for future storms. The frequency and intensity of hurricanes are increasing, and Helene highlights the need for a more resilient approach. From reinforcing infrastructure to improving early warning systems, proactive preparation is key. But beyond physical measures, Helene calls attention to a larger issue: the urgent need to address climate change. Without action, these storms will only grow more dangerous and frequent, threatening lives, homes, and economies. Communities need to embrace preparedness, not just for Helene, but for the many storms that are likely to follow. This means investing in disaster-proof infrastructure, creating stronger evacuation plans, and ensuring that local authorities and individuals are ready for future storms. Helene is a wake-up call that we cannot afford to ignore. Hurricane Helene may pass, but the underlying causes of such storms will persist if we don't take action now. As individuals, we can reduce our carbon footprint, advocate for climate policies, and support clean energy initiatives. On a larger scale, governments must prioritize climate resilience, investing in renewable energy and sustainable practices to slow the warming of our planet. Now is the time to act, not just to protect ourselves from the next storm, but to safeguard the future of our planet. Every action counts, and together, we can build a more sustainable, prepared world.